Why does a person commit a crime? Because of poverty? Because of anger? Or is it something that is always present within us? There is no single answer to this question, but some answers may surprise you a lot. The causes of crime can be classified under many headings. For example, in the theoretical literature, a wide range of causes of crime are expressed, from economic factors such as income, unemployment, and inequality, to personal characteristics, family structure, education, and the poor authority of the state. For example, when we look at the graph, we see that crime rates are generally higher in countries with bad governance. Because the economy of a country with bad governance is also bad and people resort to illegal means. Another factor that plays a significant role in crime is drugs. First, I will talk about the effects of alcohol. Alcohol use is legal and widespread, so it plays a particularly strong role in its relationship to crime and other social problems. Alcohol is a factor in 40% of all violent crimes today. And according to the Department of Justice, 37% of the approximately 2 million convicted criminals currently in prison report drinking at the time of arrest. Alcohol has been linked to violent crimes such as murder, rape, assault, child and spousal abuse more than any other illegal drug. Approximately 3 million violent crimes occur each year when the victims perceive the criminal to have been drinking. And statistics on alcohol use by violent criminals generally show that about half of all murders and assaults are committed, while the criminal, the victim, or both have been drinking. Among violent crimes, excluding robberies, the criminal is much more likely to have been drinking than under the influence of other drugs. While we're on the subject of alcohol, let's talk a little about drug use. The relationship between drugs and crime is complex. And one question is whether drug use drives people to engage in criminal activity, or whether drug users are already predisposed to such activity. Many illicit drug users commit no other crimes, and many people who commit crimes never use illicit drugs. However, at the most intense levels of drug use, drugs and crime are directly and strongly related, and serious drug use can increase and sustain pre-existing criminal activity. People with drug addictions are more likely to be arrested for acquisition crimes, such as burglary or shoplifting, or for robbery and possession of stolen goods. These crimes are often related to feeding the habit. For example, in 2004, 17% of state prisoners and 18% of federal prisoners said they committed their current crimes to obtain money for drugs. It is known that experiences such as physical, emotional, sexual abuse, physical and emotional neglect in childhood affect the psychological health of the individual in adulthood. A child who cannot have a safe space, attachment, and who learns that the world is a dangerous place, tries to provide a safe space for himself throughout his life. In doing so, he may exhibit aggressive and criminal behaviors. It would not be right to associate criminal and violent behaviors with the absence or weakness of psychological health. But it can be said that decision-making processes are damaged under the influence of the mentioned unsafe space. There is data indicating that traumatic experiences are predictive of decision-making processes related to crime. Also states that post-traumatic stress disorder, which develops as a result of childhood traumas, affects anger arousal, which can be effective in becoming a perpetrator of violence and/or crime. Studies show that childhood traumas interrupt the healthy development of people both cognitively and emotionally, and are a very important risk factor for crime and violence, which leads to serious problems in interpersonal relationships. The person you see is a notorious criminal who killed more than 15 people, Richard Ramirez. Let's briefly get to know Ramirez and his family and find out what pushed him to commit crime. At the age of 12, Richard, or Richie, became strongly influenced by his older cousin, Miguel, Mike, Ramirez, a United States Army Special Operations Forces veteran who frequently bragged about his horrific exploits during the Vietnam War. He showed Richard gruesome Polaroid photos of his victims, including Vietnamese women he had raped. In some of the photos, Mike posed with the severed head of a woman he had abused. Ramirez began smoking marijuana at the age of 10, bonding with Mike over joints and bloody war stories. Mike taught his young cousin some of his military skills, such as stealth killing. During this time, Richard would often run away from home at night and sleep in a cemetery, as his parents had no qualms about beating him as training. His family's behavior and experiences affected Ramirez and turned him into a brutal killer. The other and final factor is a type of mental illness called psychopathy. Psychopaths have always been portrayed as people who are extremely prone to violence. In stark contrast to this description, we have also seen their manipulative, charming, and exploitative sides. It is no wonder that so much has been written about psychopaths when their characteristics are so contradictory and striking. But we know that many psychopaths have a desire to harm themselves or others,